Hi, I'm Amanda Weil, a conscious stylist and host of the online series Business Style Awakening, where I am bringing together an array of amazing experts that are all going to help guide you to connect to your true self, that amazing woman that you have within, so that you're able to then discover how to use style to really bring her forth. Today's guest is amazing. We have Dr. Sherry Price with us, and she's a certified life coach and a pharmacist consultant. And Sherry really combines her love of scientific research and her desire to support women like her. So she created a what we call the Drink Less lifestyle, and it's a program to give women the healthy relationship with alcohol that they want without the shame or guilt. So Sherry, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. And I always love to start off by asking, where does your drive come from? What lights you up to really help women create a better relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, and it came really from my story with alcohol. I was practicing as a pharmacist, and over time, I don't know how it happened. It just seemed that all of a sudden I was drinking more and more.
Mm,
And it was really it became part of my nightly routine.
yeah,
It was a way I came home to relax, to transition into motherhood and do all the activities around the house. And it felt like this is where I kind of relax, take the edge off, and then make that transition. And lo and behold, some years go by and I'm noticing like this is a habit. This is
mm,
something I'm doing every night and it's not making me feel good. I started becoming more and more aware of the negative consequences, the weight gain, you're not sleeping right, I make
right,
poor food choices.
right.
And then I tried a bunch of modalities to cut back, and I found it very challenging because even though I'd be successful with like a dry January or
Right.
sober October, at the end of that 30-day period, I went back to the same pattern of drinking that I was. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just started learning more and more about, I'm all about the science and alcohol is a drug and I love drugs because I'm a pharmacist. So I just started looking into all the ways we can make positive changes really around habits and something such of the nature that can be addictive like alcohol.
Mhm.
And so once I found a lot of the tools that were working for me, I'm like, I wanted to share this with so many other women because some of my friends were like, wow, I see how you've really changed with your relationship with alcohol. And now, you're losing weight, you're glowing better, your skin's not, we all notice these effects. And so I started helping them and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to come on this show, talk about it, because we can get into that routine nature. Um, and a lot of us are at home when we're doing it. So,
Yeah.
and then we have this thought process, at least I did, where I thought society would say, oh, well, if you have a problem, you have to go all or nothing, right?
Right.
You just have to, go sober route and that's it. And I didn't find that's true. And actually a lot of the research doesn't show and support that if you're not full blown alcoholic.
I love that we're talking about this because I think it really relates to so many things in our life, that there are certain things that we can use to numb ourselves a little bit.
Mhm.
Like you said, take the edge off, make ourselves feel better, whether it's drinking alcohol, whether it's overeating, over shopping, right? All the things that are totally fine in moderation. But once taken a little bit too far, you're right. It just completely cuts us off. And I find that with a lot of women, and I'm curious to hear what your take on this is, but I feel like with so many women, we're so busy, we have so much on our plate, and you're right, coming home and having that one glass of wine, which turns into maybe two, which turns into maybe a bottle, because you start to need more and more to take that edge off, right? You become reliant on that instead of being able to just connect back to yourself and let yourself kind of, I don't want to say self-soothe, but just reconnect to who you truly
Yes.
are without that external
Yes.
validation.
Yes. Yes. And that one drink always leads to more, especially if it's become a habit and a routine. And, so much around our social life. I mean, I
Hmm.
have a toddler at home and, even mommy play dates and our play dates, there's alcohol there, and there's that mommy wine culture. And then all these memes that we're wearing rosé all day t-shirts, and, they're fun and they're,
Yeah.
lively, but all that input that we get makes it seem that, drinking alcohol is normal.
Right.
And so
Right.
when one drink turns into a whole bottle, like it did for me, right? It's kind of like, okay, every morning I'm waking up going, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want
Yeah.
to keep doing this. Why am
Yeah.
I doing this? So you're right. Becomes a way to have fun, self-soothe, take the edge off. It really does become an emotional connection.
Yes. Yes. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I personally notice that when I am not drinking, let's say I take, a 30-day, or I'm really focused on my fitness and my nutrition and I don't want that alcohol, my mind is clearer. I feel very
Mm-hmm.
connected to source. I feel like I'm very much in flow with my vision. Usually that's when my business really booms because I'm waking up clearer. I'm more focused on doing the meditation, all the things,
Yes.
right, that you get in the habit of doing. But I also love that you're saying that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's
No.
it's
And
just
so
reshaping the way you use it, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I didn't want. I didn't want to be sober, and I didn't want to count days. I didn't
Yeah.
want, the institution of, a sponsor and all that. That to me felt like I wasn't there yet, right? I
Yeah.
just felt like I was a few steps ahead of that, right? Of
Yeah.
course, I could have progressed to there, but I felt like that just wasn't my space. And as a healthcare practitioner, I was kind of ashamed to even acknowledge,
Mhm.
right? And go
Mhm.
into a public setting like that. And so I wanted really to offer a way to women who, are high achieving and don't
Yeah.
want to put it out there, and maybe don't have time for, outside meetings and all the meetings and all that support, but that they could take care of it in a way that's more confidential, and not be a label.
Yeah, and it's also, you don't necessarily have to feel like you have a huge problem with it, right? Like something that was interesting that I had heard yesterday was when you go to the AA meetings, or you're raising your hand and you're saying, "Hi, I am an alcoholic," and you and I both know your "I am" statements are so
Mm.
powerful. So
Yes.
if you keep repeating, "I am an alcoholic," "I am an alcoholic," just like "I am an overeater," "I am an overshopper," you're going to keep doing that. So
Yeah.
I would I feel like your way of doing it is really allowing women to focus on like what is working and just reshaping their viewpoint on it, which to me feels like a better way to go about it.
Yeah, because I was going to mention, jump in there. When you say
Yeah.
these I am statements, to me, that makes me feel powerless.
Yes.
And that alcohol has all the control, and that's not
Yeah.
the truth, right? We
Yeah.
know it's just a substance. We don't have a gun to our head if we're going to pick it up and drink it or not, right? So we do have all the power, and it's just executing that and finding out a way to harness that and
Yeah.
bring it forth so it doesn't feel like the alcohol's in charge.
So as you're working with your clients, and let's focus in on women, just because our audience today really is women, are you finding a lot of similarities as to why these women are reaching for alcohol, or does it really just run the gamut for each client? I'm just curious if there's like some underlying
Yeah.
issue or some underlying cause.
Yeah, I'd say there's a multitude of causes, and it depends on your slice of life, right? Like, so I
Mm,
work with some empty nesters, right? And so for them, it might be loneliness or boredom, or my kids are
mm,
gone, and now what gives me meaning and purpose? So we have to dive underneath there and see now, how do we pivot
yeah,
into this new stage of life? And then there's a lot of women like me. We are raising young kids, and there's just so much, it seems overwhelming, right? So this is the way to kind of, and women don't talk about it like this, but when
mm,
I tell them, like, this is how you're relaxing, and that's a form of self-care, and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to be doing this as self-care, right? I'd rather be doing other things, but this is just so quick, it's so easy, it's cost effective, it's just something I can do at home. So it meets a lot of criteria, but then when we break it down, like, there's other things that you could be doing that's healthier. And
yeah,
a lot of people are eating organic, and they're just doing all these things, and they're really committed to the gym, but there's this one area that just can't seem to overcome.
yeah,
So it's really just like breaking that habit of over drinking. And if you look at the CDC website, it says 90% of people who excessively drink are not considered to be alcoholics, or now they use the term alcohol use disorder. So
Wow.
90%. And that was, huge for me because, I always had that little bit of ticker tape in the back of my head saying, am I an alcoholic? Because it's so hard to give this up and cut
Yeah.
back, and I can't seem to stop after one. But a lot of us feel that way. And so
Hmm.
90% is what they estimate from the CDC. Mm-hmm.
So for everyone listening that's maybe kind of raising their hand, like, ooh, they're starting to realize, you know what, I do use wine to relax. I do really enjoy my two glasses every day. What is one tip or one thing that could really help them become a little bit more aware and maybe start to, I don't know, take one day off or start slowly, like, or try to find other ways to take the edge off? Like, what is one thing that you would really suggest?
Yeah. So I always start when I work with my clients is really dropping all forms of judgment,
Hmm.
because there could be
It's
that,
important. So
um,
important.
like, oh, I'm a bad person, or
Mhm.
this, or I feel so much shame or so much guilt, or you
Yeah.
don't understand my life, right? Like all of this judgment, and then we internalize it.
Mm.
And so that's like the first step is like, okay, if this wasn't important to me, what can I make room for? What can I make
Mm.
space for? And so it's really that inward journey, right? Because we become disconnected when we drink. Like you said, we numb. And so we don't even know how we're feeling. And it's funny, sometimes I'm working with my clients, and when I'm having them tune in to actually every sip that they're taking, and like, if you're going to have it, fully enjoy it.
Mhm.
But then when it stops being joyful, let's stop. The problem is we tune out and we just keep going on autopilot and keep refilling the glass, and we're
Yep.
not even connected. So when I tell my clients to stay present, and that's one thing these ladies can do watching this, is stay present, you will notice there is a point much sooner than when
Mm.
you typically stop that it actually is not joyful anymore. There's no
Yeah.
more pleasure to it. And a
Yeah.
lot of people talk about chasing, keeping in that sweet spot, like, oh, I've got this buzz going and I'm going to keep chasing it. But you ever notice you don't stay there? You never
Mm.
stay there. So the chase is just totally an illusion.
Yeah. I love what you just said about being present and enjoying every sip. And I think I agree. I think that completely changes your relationship with everything, food, alcohol, everything,
Mm-hmm.
where when you're just blessing it, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to sit and really enjoy this glass of wine. It tastes so wonderful with my dinner. Oh, and I'm so excited to eat this cookie and just really enjoy it and not judge yourself and not put the negative energy on it, because then that's when things get yucky. And I think it's totally connected, that how you talk to yourself and how you enjoy, and the more conscious you are, the less quote unquote problems you have with like weight gain or, just other things, because everything you're putting in your body is joy, and from a place of joy, and just really being at peace. So I think there's a lot to what you just said. I really like that step. Just being aware.
Yeah, and there's research, particularly in the alcohol realm, is that when you drink, you stimulate memory cells of the past.
Mm.
So when you're drinking, you're not actually experiencing your present
Oh,
experience. It's activating all the memories, like from college or years past, where it was such fun and such enjoyment. So you're
interesting.
activating all of those memory cells in the brain. So it's taking you again away from the present, which you might not actually be loving it at the present moment.
That is fascinating.
Mhm.
Is that why people can sometimes get sad when they drink?
Well, it is a hormone disruptor.
Okay.
It impacts sleep. So it does
Hmm.
change melatonin levels, it changes estrogen levels, it
Hmm.
changes serotonin levels, it changes dopamine levels. So this is why it may feel like at first it takes the
Hmm.
edge off and it's like anti-anxiety, antidepressant, but we know it's a depressant. So over time, it just worsens all those conditions.
Mm.
So it just has so many different effects within the hormonal system within the body and all the neurotransmitters and chemicals. So it could be a double-edged sword, because at first it may
Yeah.
feel good, but then over time it stops feeling good.
Mm. It's interesting. I feel like that's kind of the same as when you're eating chocolate. At first it tastes good and eventually you feel sick.
Yeah.
or like when you shop, at first it feels good. And then eventually you're like, I have a closet full of way too much stuff. I don't need any more of this. I feel like that's, yeah,
It's similar because it does activate that dopamine response, and dopamine
yeah.
is that more chemical. It tells us to go get more, go get more, go get more.
Mm.
Hmm.
So I'm curious too, as you're working with your clients and they start to go through this process where they're just becoming more aware, and I'm sure starting to really connect back to their true self and what really lights them up. Do you ever find that how they show up in the exterior changes? Like they start dressing different or they change up their style, they start showing up more? I'm curious to see how that affects like their style.
Yeah, it could for some of the women. And actually, that's some of the tools I use with my clients. I'll ask, if you weren't drinking so much, how would you dress? Because then that really tells
Oh,
me how much this is affecting them in a good or negative way, right?
okay.
So how they see themselves without alcohol. Now, some people think my life's not going to be any fun. It's just not going to be as
Mm,
enjoyable. I'm not going to be this extrovert. I don't have this liquid courage. So we all have these stories around alcohol,
right.
and they may not be the same stories that are helping us in our current slice of life. So
Mm,
some of the women will change, and some of them women just feel more confident even without the alcohol, because confidence comes
mm.
from within.
Yep. Oh, that's fascinating.
Hmm.
That's fascinating. Now, have you found, I'm curious, talking about your personal style, have you found that as your business has grown, as you've grown as just a woman, as a human being, have you, and also as you went through your experience of drinking less,
Yeah.
did you find that your style shifted and that the way that you were showing up in the world changed?
Absolutely, because as you mentioned, I no longer have this numbing agent at night where I
Mm,
just wanted to change, get in my yoga pants, right? Just
mm,
relax, kick back. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that,
right.
but that became so important to me. I talk about this a lot of my webinars that I do for free is, when you drink so much, your brain gets wired to want the alcohol over other activities that are pleasurable, because it
Wow.
gets more dopamine hit and more pleasure from the alcohol. So I use this story all the time. Like when I was raising my daughter and I was drinking every night, I'd read her one or two books before bed, which she'd start asking for a third or a fourth. And I would say, oh, mommy it's too late. We can't get to that third or fourth book, which was totally bogus. It was just
Yeah.
me wanting to get back to sipping on my alcohol. And
Wow.
so the brain just prioritizes that as being so important. So this is why a lot of women, when they come home, they say, I get so unmotivated. I don't feel like cleaning the house. I don't feel like doing that extra load of laundry. I don't feel like doing more things or getting back on the computer at work to finish up emails, because I feel
Mm,
so unmotivated,
mm-hmm.
because the brain has been hijacked by the alcohol, right? And
Mm,
that becomes the most important thing.
yeah.
And so
Well,
when that's not so important, then I have more energy in the morning to put a little more effort into my dress, into my style. I notice I wear a little more jewelry now that I'm
ooh.
not, a chronic imbiber. Now I just socially drink.
Yeah, it's like that extra little touch. Like you're excited to put on that extra little touch.
Yeah. And then you don't have the belly bloat going on
Yeah.
and the extra weight.
The,
So
yeah.
then you feel better in your clothes too.
Yeah. And your face, you don't wake up with your face all puffy.
Right. And red and
Yeah.
mouth all
Yeah.
dry and a slight headache going on, and you're just, that negative self-talk was just had to end for me. I didn't have a
Mm,
bottom, but it was just the negative self-talk of like, Sherry,
mm,
how many more years are you going to go on like this? How many more months are you going to be wishing you didn't do this every night?
yeah.
So it was just that negative self-talk that just wore me down mentally over time.
So what are some of the other things that you do to just kind of build yourself back up, to feel really connected, to feel like you're powerful feminine? Like what are some of the other things that you have now replaced, added in
Yeah.
since you've scaled back on the alcohol?
Well, the interesting thing is I would have never known any of this until you scale back. So if any
Mm,
women are stuck in this drinking cycle, as I call it, right, you just don't know the joys that are going to come,
mm,
because your brain is so hijacked by the intense dopamine from the alcohol. Now, once you get through, there's a little bit of a weaning period, right? Once you get it totally out of your system, which can take 7, 10 days, sometimes more, depending on how long and how much you've been drinking. Um, that you'll start to notice your dopamine cycle kind of adapt back to
Hmm.
accepting normal joys.
Hmm.
So one of the things I used to kind of get annoyed about is when my daughter, before bed would like to peck me a couple of times on the cheek. And so, when I was on my third glass or fourth glass and she's doing this, it was kind of like, okay, just go to bed. I want to get back
Yeah.
to my wine. This is a little annoying.
Yeah. Enough.
But now that she pecks me a couple of times, 5 or 6 times, I just like every one of those is like a sweet hit of dopamine for
Mm,
me. But I
yeah.
couldn't feel that when my brain was hijacked by the hit of
Wow.
dopamine from alcohol. So if you're not
Fascinating.
experiencing the little joys in life and you're feeling robbed from that, it's
Mm,
because the alcohol is robbing your brain from that. So once you remove,
fascinating.
you know, uh, you don't have to remove alcohol entirely,
Right.
but once you remove a significant amount of it, then you start experiencing those joys again.
Mm.
Because
I,
it numbs the bad as well as the good feelings, and people don't
right.
realize that.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I totally get what you're saying, where, even just going on a walk sometimes and just stopping to admire, like, oh my gosh, that flower is so beautiful. Oh, look at those hummingbirds.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at the sky. It's so beautiful. And sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit crazy. Like, why am I noticing all these amazing things? But then I'm like, because it's just beautiful, because I'm present
Mhm.
and it feels good. And
Mhm.
you're right. Instead of being so like in your zone of like, oh, let me just get through this because then I can go have my glass of wine later. It's like, let me just actually enjoy this right now. And you know what? I don't even need that wine. I'm actually going to take a bath. I'm going to, read a book. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
what you just said. That's
And,
beautiful.
and people will tell me all the time, like, I'm actually enjoying my work more, my job more, my
Yeah.
family more, because they're more present and they just don't have that hijacked brain.
Right. It's not like
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And you're always constantly chasing that cycle of,
Mm. Oh, so much good stuff here. I can't believe we're already almost at time. I feel like I could sit and talk to you forever about all this. I'm curious if there's anything else that you'd want to share, that you want to share with the audience that I didn't ask you or that we didn't talk about.
yes, I have, if you go to my website, www.sherryprice.com, there's a little tutorial there and a free book that you can download. And it just gives you some tips on how to start cutting back.
Mm,
That's in a more manageable way, right? Because I think cutting back slowly over time is a little bit more sustainable, especially as the body's learning to adapt to less alcohol.
yeah.
I know when I just cut dry for those 30 days, for me, I was always crossing days off on the calendar, and I just didn't feel it was sustainable for my lifestyle. And so there's some tips and tools in that little freebie on my website that you can start implementing right away.
That is so generous. Thank you. And to everyone tuning in, don't worry, I have the link right below the video. So don't feel like you have to go back and jot it all down. So just click on the link below. I'm definitely going to do that and take a peek at some of your tips. And, Sherry, thank you so much for coming on today. This was so informative. I love being able to hear the scientific research around it, because that makes it, I mean, obviously, yes, we hear, okay, alcohol long term is not great for you, but to actually hear what it's doing to your dopamine and to your emotions and just your way of being, that was really helpful to hear that. And also, I think for people to start to understand why they're feeling certain ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why they're craving alcohol more and more. So
Right.
I love, thank you for all that beautiful insight that you shared.
You're welcome, Amanda. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with your community.
Of course, of course. And to everyone tuning in, thank you guys so much for watching today. We would really love to hear, like, what landed for you. Is this making you more aware to how you've been using alcohol as a way to kind of numb out, or get rid of your anxiety? Go ahead and hit reply to the email. I would love to hear if this really opened your eyes, and if there's something else that you can start swapping in. Maybe instead of coming home and drinking that glass of wine, it's going back to the yoga class that you love. I would love to hear some of those shifts that you can start making, and I will forward all of your feedback on to Dr. Sherry. And be sure to stay tuned for all the rest of the amazing experts we have in this series. They're all talking about just such beautiful, important things for you to bring into your life. So thanks again.
Bye bye.